Chili here with Sirius Talis Moon, and this is a Do It by Feet / Ikmak Problem episode. Moon has ingressed to Leo, applying to oppose Pluto, and Mars is applying to square Pluto from Venus sign. Will Venus save the day? Venus is 2 degrees Cancer. Jupiter is 22ing, ruling over Black Moon Lilith. All these ladies, shout out to the BIPOC ladies, talking about reclaiming the woman, whether it's Lilith, whether it's the origin of the text, beginning to shift the religious perspective on women. And so, and all the non-BIPOC women, all of these Lilith Sag, shout out to Conspiracy, the understanding that Lakshmi resides when the soul resides in the body, in the orgasmic self body. He didn't say it in quite many words, but that's but that's basically the abundant, the abundant, the affluent woman that is not abundant or on the account of slaves or castes, for that record. I owe you another credit for actually women that talked about the fact that in India the practices still need to improve when it comes to actually practicing honoring of women, even among women. All of that is very likely this Lilith Sag. Now, this is a Do It by Feet episode, and it Do It by Feet / Ikmak Problem. So, for those of you that have had Uranus in Jupiter signs, particularly, not particularly, I have it in Sag, Ascendant Pisces. So, this is where something to do with our feet. If you have the co-presence of, Saturn in Jupiter sign, or Saturn, Jupiter, and Uranus in Capricorn, or Uranus in Aquarius, you may experience similar results. This means that there is something unusual with our feet that affects our nervous system, and to align it creates a societal change. The spiritual societal change, but also Uranus rules space to breathe, space to release the Kundalini energy. And this Uranus also rules trauma and shock, and the curation from trauma and shock has to do sometimes with aligning our feet in a particular way and allowing the life energy, which is our emotions, to come out. It's not just practicing the physical, let's say aligning our big toe. It's also releasing the emotional charge of our big toes being misaligned to begin with that creates the change. Just like it's not just using, let's say, essential oils. It's meditating, being inspired to take action in our life, even if that action is rest. So, Do It by Feet, just the practice of aligning the big toe. And I'm not a podiatrist, so big toe misalignment can mean fascia issues, fascia drainage issues. It can mean lymph node issues. It can mean thyroid issues. All of those affect very literally our will to live. So we understand, if we look at our feet and we look at our mom's feet, we look at our dad's feet, and we say, okay, that thing runs in the family. It's not hereditary. What runs in the family is something that's called dishonoring the feminine. And that creates fertility issues. It's not just Lakshmi not visiting the house. It's difficulty to even a lack of desire to have children. And sometimes we would only run into the teachings relevant to that. In particular, for example, I'm having a Uranus opposition, Neptune square, previously Pluto square. So the teaching around not being, how should I say that, doom and gloom and aligning the toes was something that I received around my Saturn maturation. Then around my Pluto square, there was an attempt to prevent me to align my toes. Because basically it leads to the will to live and the understanding of the connection between orgasmic birthing and the will to live. Orgasmic birthing is not just babies, it's projects, it's our life and sense of self. And of course, it is vocal because it's a release of any junctures and trauma. Also, men recovering from, let's say, war trauma, women recovering from war trauma, or any type of trauma, releasing the stress in the toes, around the toenails. That is where the things are buried that are to do with survivalistic issues and the entire body issues, because the foundation. If somebody thinks you open the brothel, well, they need to learn that actually those things are to do the what people call, sex work as basically raped infants. And what you're healing from, man or woman, is very likely being targeted as infant for the rituals to do with that. Triggers everybody, triggers even the self to release those emotions. The fact that it's like, okay, where's the space, Uranus, to release those emotions? If you don't have it, now you see what's the problem in society. And it's a societal. When I said suicide is a societal murder, it was right before Israel was invaded in a massacre of ritual abuse. Okay, to get a nation to comply with genocide, the common people need to see the ritual abuse and so-called the animalistic behavior of what they associate with the entire enemy. People were ritually raped, ritually murdered in their villages. BIPOC people, foreigner employees, everyone. Of course, the Epstein infiltration of the Israeli governance at all levels and decrees prevented the success of the Watchers. The Watchers that, from their perspective, were seeing that there's going to be an invasion, and they were trying to report that up the link. They were tortured in 7th October. And then the people are still busy recovering from the trauma while the country is effectively committing what was later be called the genocide. The soldiers go to war to protect. Their commanders of commanders of commanders create ritual humiliation there. But the people that went through post-trauma of ritual abuse within Israel were still, most of them were left with zero to no support system. The people that are trafficked by their husband and nobody around notices that or do anything. And every time it happens, they believe it's re-victimization. Where are the people tortured that are the infiltrated people? At hospitals, those that manage, that have a family that understands that something bad happened in hospital, they might make it out alive. Those that don't, raping women will not heal a man from war trauma. It will create assassins towards him. Real estate is allocated to trafficking cities, but not to the orgasmic birthing women. Not to recovery from rape trauma. How do you think people recover from rape trauma? They need to release their anger, their rage, their emotions. Everything has been trapped in the body without attacking anybody else. One of the things, if that's been perpetual intergenerational trauma, is aligning the feet. The big toe is a big telltale. Is a big telltale of chronic helplessness that runs in the lineage due to those traumas. This is why these people don't feel like they have the energy to, I'm not even talking about court system representation where there is actual epistemic challenges. Because it's an energy thing. It's not just, oh, we're going to put, I don't know, something that aligns the big toe and everything. No, it's not. The only time I saw it work was with a lady that was dancing, and then she still kept doing things she loves and so on and so forth. And so she aligned the big toe, and it worked because that was just the residues. Just the residues people can fix with, let's say, surgery. But the other things, people do a surgery and it still doesn't work because they haven't released the emotions, and society hasn't changed to contain the person that is not raped. And then they're being blamed for, they're being called a baby when it's their infant phase that needs healing. They're being told that they don't want to help themselves when they're doing everything possible to help themselves, but it takes the time and the space, and it doesn't work with industrialized society. You want to keep a person in a job where they can't even stand on their feet, and when they need to roam and constantly move around, and anything even small that somebody does is even reminds them they could break off like a war veteran. And yet the war veterans are being indoctrinated that they can just retrieve their sexual whatnot by raping someone and paying to rape them. That's the trafficking cities that they build. It doesn't heal anybody's sexuality, it creates assassins. People did not even have access to euthanasia, and then they were blamed for basically taking the steps to actually curate, where society wasn't accommodating. So it wasn't accommodating. So they say, okay, then euthanasia. No, it wasn't accommodating for that either. And actually, euthanasia for what? For the fact that people can absolutely cool with infants being raped, with women being raped, with men being raped, calling it sex work, calling it recovery, where somebody is raped because, oh, it's a war veteran. But if somebody practice prep for orgasmic birthing, oh no, that noise they can't. Well, they sit around with the neighbors making more noise than anybody. People complain about the noise without asking for enough space between people, and for the culture to abolish all types of rape, definitely under the classified as what they call sex work. A woman will not be safe to live in Eckveld in a house and practice orgasmic birthing in a way that bothers and no one, but maybe wakes the sleeping bears. That can be possible, but not if she's in risk of rape or trafficking. Culture. Epstein Island was a breeding farm. Why has society allowed it? Because we're not used to orgasmic birthing. Not transmuting pain in power. Orgasmic, pleasurable, joyous. So joyous that the pain diminishes in the face of the joy. That is, and it's a life experience. Remember when I went to psychologist around the subprime crisis and I told him I want to live. And he has explained to me that the people that feel enough joy so that the pain diminishes, I began to understand it myself, because it was like trying to see what's going on. I was like, well, some people feel enough joy so that the pain diminishes. It goes all the way to birth. When the birth given mother screams in pain because she hasn't learned orgasmic birthing, there was no teaching back there. And then people cannot hear the screams of the birthing woman. That's a trauma. Of course, whenever even the infant will try to connect with their orgasmic self, and by the way, that is a part of what makes infants susceptible to targeting. Not being able to cry because, oh my God, people will see, people will. And then people try to force people to cry instead of creating a world where it's safe for them for it to release emotions in general. Um, the Epstein dossiers are almost first and foremost about creating traumatized infants. Now these things trapped in the body's structure, in the bone structure. Whether you see the symbol, whether you see the line of the liver meridian or not. Is it tense or not? How is the big toe doing? It's literally around the will to live of people, let alone childbirth. Now, when we are seeing that society, women learn, okay, practices from orgasmic birthing as, let's say, life changes. They begin to practice, oops, they're being targeted, and even their neighbors are against them because that is noise, but the neighbors that make the noise, that is okay. And then the neighbors, one is, has worked in the health ministry and takes all the prescribed things and then does shopping spree on in the middle of the night. But fortunately, it's cheap things, just amount, and they have like the permanent housing, so they can still afford that. And the other has a neural issue that they cannot even travel to a place where there's a tiny slope, but they have to climb in elderly age 3 stories up. Why don't they have housing? Who can voice their voice? Only the person that's doing the orgasmic birthing practice. And you see that in practice. That's the person that they make of the problem. They can't stand the noise, but hey, that noise is important when their voice is represented even years after. When even it's not even about getting them a house with a garden. That can somehow be fought for, that can somehow be arranged. People can collect money, I don't know. It's for them to feel safe living in that place. Because it's kind of like, well, second, third floor is safer. If we get upper than 7, then the search and rescue can't reach you in a fire. A bit around that is where, if you're not claustrophobic or agoraphobic, the thieves become lazy. To actually solve that problems, we need people en masse to actually have a housing that's fit for orgasmic birthing, and the relevant culture that supports that is not going to say, oh, there's a person to traffic, oh, they must be a sex worker, when they are healing from the trauma of being raped as an infant. It's not just, oh, we're going to allocate more rooms for birthing at hospitals. First of all, amazing. Does your staff have the conditions to give orgasmic birthing? Orgasmic birthing, people need to prepare. Now, they say when a person gets pregnant, yeah, there's, I don't know, womb contractions can also quicken birthing, so I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. For example, I wouldn't prescribe anything that is of detox property as essential oil to a woman that is trying to conceive. Maybe with the exception of Angelica. And secondly, um, and secondly, if there is something trapped in the fascia, and we can see it with the big toe. Again, I'm not podiatrist. Simple teaching. There are simple courses that teach to align the fascia or to align the big toe. It's an everyday practice. And then with time, there are less emotion trapped there. And it's more joy and pleasure. If I have to sneak into the inner bathroom in a drugstore, in a particular drugstore where it's not too dangerous to go into the inner bathroom, so not to bother the visitors or the employees, to align my big toe, and it sounds like a woman giving birth. Also, when a man heals from trauma, it's gonna sound pretty much the same. And if he has something, he's gonna see. There are men too. My father, biological half father, I looked at the pictures. He had also big toe issues. It's an everyday practice. Now, think about it. He was secular Jew, then he became religious. Now he has Genesis issues. I don't know today. It was a big family. Like, I think if my father aligns his big toe, B'nai Brak becomes secular again. The family, however, might become bigger than it already is. And they're gonna need housing, and so ask what happens, Sheila. What happens if your mom aligns the big toe? I don't know. She'll live to 200. I mean, you go to IKEA and you see, oh, around the baby shop, oh, there's something I could buy for my kittens. It's the they need that bed where they can stay. Right now, they sit on the terrace, sunbathing. They know to locate the sun in the house. Now, if I would be sitting there in the middle of the kitchen, no way I could get away with that. Now, from that, you see, one of the things, and it's something I received in energy from one of actually my colleagues, and he paid attention. Again, was he used in a trafficking agenda? I don't know. I'm talking about the good things that were actually a point to consider and that I adopted. I was in a one-room apartment, and I received to separate the spaces. It's like, hey, you like everything in one. Prayer is, let's say, prayer or spiritual practice in one room. There's the bedroom in one room. There's the cooking in one room. It's kind of like you need a house. And when we do this practice, just the practice of aligning the big toes, and I can even grab one big toe with another and begin to, first of all, it works on the nervous system, because I have to think about the basically aligning the toes, and it releases something that was stagnant. It releases motion and creates, I don't like the word controlled, but aligned motion or sense of self motion, a motion aligned with sense of self, conscious motion. Control is not what we're seeking here. Consciousness and relaxation into is. And when we practice that, we see, because we're going to have a more sense of what do we need. For example, the ability, I need to practice that for quite some time. Wait a second, I need to be sitting around, let's say, a place where it's safe outside to practice that. So next to, I don't know, a private beach, or not private beach in the sense that I own the beach, but enough spaces so it doesn't bother anyone. But then I also want to have a connection with society. I also want to be able to travel quite often to a place that is more, let's say, population dense. But also when I have, when I begin to feel the lack of will to live, and I begin to feel rage, and I know I need to align my big toes. Now that there's a practice that helps more than any prescribed pill, and believe me, I tried nearly them all. Because when it's trapped in the body, and the body is not aligned, it doesn't matter what pills, even essential oils. They can assist me with learning that I need to, let's say, align my big toe. They can assist me with processing the emotions that come out. By the way, people that have toenail fungi, don't be shy of the time it takes to heal. For many of you, essential oils are still better. And by the way, there were even certain aromatherapists that were saying, no, for big toe, essential oils is not, but the other stuff are not actually facilitating if it's something chronic. And it affects mental health, and the mental health, what is prescribed is intervening with absorption of minerals. The stagnation is probably around being targeted as an infant. From there, it's no surprise that people are ritually abused and sacrificed in hospital, mental hospital, physical hospital, unregistered births. Of course, think about the list of psychiatrists that cooperated with the Epstein infiltration. They were preparing the people that would commit genocide there. Wow. That's the truth. That's what they do there. They create traumatized children, and then when they go to mental health, they traumatize them again until they have a prepared Epstein, and a prepared somebody that would be looted, not unlike Adolf Hitler to commit a genocide. Like I said, Adolf Hitler had Pluto, Rahu, and making the connection between my lineage that came from, let's say, Ukraine, and had weddings at puberty. My grandmother, that was not from Ukraine, but she was from Eastern Europe, and her husband had to change her birth date to make it look like she's older, so that they can marry. Ashkenazi Jews. And that needs to be said as well. It's not just, in Islam. And it's not just Sephardi Jews, that most of them are, Calvinist converts and so-called Catholics. And it's not just Catholics. It's also the pre-Christian traditions that do that. The result is that the inner holocaust of those raped children basically became external. And the women that were trafficked to the Nazis to loot the Jews, so that they will get money from the wealth of the Jews and from the wealth of the Nazis, and then humiliate the trafficked women. That's the foundation of Israel. Israel is now dealing with the fact that Chiron is about to ingress to Taurus. Israel is going to deal what Uranus hasn't done, Chiron is going to tend to. Last time Chiron was conjoining Beta Persei, we had in Israel a big crisis where they were trying to create exponential growth of stocks, and basically the banks were confiscated by the state. Now, what's the connection with that to Beta Persei story? We all understand. The Epsteins want you to invest in AI. People won't invest. They try to create exponential growth of AI stocks. Like if we haven't noticed. They, AI can only be profitable in as much as it supports the orgasmic birthing couple or the orgasmic birthing single person. And when it tries to hack the nervous system and control on other people's life energy, it basically negates the orgasmic birthing. If we don't get that right, it's going to be nuclear A-bomb that nobody will even understand how it was set off. Because try to look for the consciousness of the tortured infant within all the consciousnesses that took on and passed it from here to here to here to here, and then boom. What aligns a person with their sense of self is good technology. What doesn't is going to create this A-bomb, series of A-bombs, or hydrogen bombs, or whatever, wherever Pluto's going to be. Big gassy giants. It's air sign, and then right now right now Pluto agrees with Uranus, and we think that's a big mess. No, wait when it will agree with Aries, and Uranus will apply to sextile Aries. So it is to sextile or to square. When Uranus conjoined Aries, we had the Me Too. Now Uranus is semi-square. Uranus Beta Persei was semi-squaring Aries. It was semi-sextile in Aries, which is a hard aspect. It's a 30-degree aspect. We had houses going boom. Nederland had the moon there. Houses were going boom in both Israel and Netherlands. Why? Well, for the people trafficked there, it's the end of their misery. And for the families around, it's like, where were they? It was next to my uncle's neighborhood. He was on a shift. The dogs were in the house. They had to cut the shift and immediately take the dogs. Fortunately, their house wasn't evacuated, I think, because I don't know about all the outbreaks. And it happened in the best of neighborhoods. Okay, um, it's not about new money or flashiness, but let's just say, um, and and by the way, these Epsteiners, they also infiltrate families. Around the 7th October, suddenly I saw my father and my uncle don't communicate on Facebook. Now I don't have Facebook, but mm, mm. כן, מתחילים לריב? So, this um, this type of things, this type of issues, um, really affect the trajectory, because these are connected to the transitional phases, to phases of where people could experience crisis. And most of what people are told about recovery from trauma is not about, oh, a person needs to recover from trauma and reintegrate in society. No, the entire society needs to change. That's why there was a trauma to begin with. So, do it as per the do it by feet. Again, big toe alignment. It goes with the emotional release, with the awareness, with the consciousness. And it's not just the big toe, it's the toes around it, it's the structure of the foot, but it's also the structure of the entire body, the entire feet, the entire legs. And you're gonna see how much time do you need to actually dedicate to that. and how whenever you get depressed, wherever you get enraged, wherever you begin to think like, like a resin, when you begin to think like a resin, it's time to practice that again. You're going to see how much times you actually need to practice that so that you can actually have a conversation, actually think. Now, particularly if you're in a transitional phase or something stagnant in life, because it's releasing stagnation of generations. And again, the results from being third generation to Holocaust trauma to talking about how could a Holocaust have been prevented and how we can prevent the Inquisition are big results. This is beyond. It's beyond. It's tending to those things. A society that allows to traffic its people is okay to genocide its society. תכף.